Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive into a topic that I am sure a lot of you will enjoy. Who doesn't love biting into a juicy, perfect peach in the summertime?
Absolutely. And today we are talking all about the challenges of keeping those peaches safe and plentiful by taking a deep dive into the world of peach orchard pest and disease management.
That's right. And to help us do that, we're going to be looking at some really cool information from Pharmanaut. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Pharmanaut is a company that's using some pretty cutting-edge satellite technology to help farmers all over the world take better care of their crops. And their work with peaches is a fantastic example of how tech is really changing the game when it comes to agriculture. So whether you're prepping for a meeting about ag tech, or maybe you're just a foodie who's curious about where their food comes from, this deep dive is for you.
I think it's fascinating how much actually goes into producing the food we eat. And peaches are a great example of that delicate balance between nature's bounty and the constant vigilance it takes to protect them.
It's like a constant battle going on out there in the orchard, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about the enemy here.
Okay.
What kind of pests and diseases are peach trees up against?
Oh, there's a whole host of them. We're talking fungal diseases like brown rot, which, as you can imagine, can just decimate a crop, turning those beautiful peaches into a fuzzy mess.
Yeah, nobody wants a fuzzy peach.
No, not at all. And then you have your insect pests like the peach twig borer. These tiny creatures can cause a surprising amount of damage.
You wouldn't think something so small could be such a big problem.
You'd be surprised. And we can't forget about bacterial diseases. Those can lead to all sorts of blemishes and deformities on the fruit, which obviously impacts the quality and marketability.
So it sounds like growers have their work cut out for them.
They do, but luckily we've got a lot of tools and strategies to help manage these threats.
Okay, so where do we even begin?
Well, the first step is knowledge. You have to know your enemy right. Understanding the signs and symptoms of these different pests and diseases is crucial for early detection.
Makes sense. It's like a doctor diagnosing an illness. The sooner you catch it, the better.
Exactly, and that's especially true when it comes to peach trees.
So let's walk through the peach tree's annual cycle and talk about what growers are up against at different stages.
Sounds good.
So spring, that's when everything's coming back to life, right? But it's also when peach trees are their most vulnerable.
That's true. Spring is all about setting the stage for a healthy and productive season.
And I imagine that starts with pruning.
Absolutely. Pruning is essential for a number of reasons. It helps to create better air circulation within the tree, allowing sunlight to penetrate and reach all those leaves. That not only promotes good growth, but it also helps to prevent fungal diseases, which love those damp, stagnant conditions.
And so it's like giving the peach tree a good haircut and letting it breathe.
That's a great way to put it. And along with pruning, sanitation is really important too.
Now, what do you mean by sanitation?
It's all about keeping the orchard clean, basically. Removing fallen leaves, debris, anything that could be harboring pests or diseases.
Kind of like spring cleaning for the orchard.
Exactly. It's all about disrupting those pest and disease life cycles before they can get a foothold.
You know, I remember reading about something called dormant sprays.
Oh, yeah. Those are a key part of the springtime arsenal.
What are those exactly?
Dormant sprays are typically oil-based, and they're applied before the buds start to break in the spring. They target overwintering insects and their eggs. It's like a preemptive strike to prevent them from becoming active and causing problems.
And speaking of springtime problems, there's one in particular that comes to mind, peach leaf curl.
Oh, yeah, that can be a real headache for growers.
What causes that and how do they deal with it?
Peach leaf curl is a fungal disease, and it can really impact a tree's vigor and growth. You can usually tell if a tree has it because the leaves will become all distorted and curled, almost like they have the measles or something.
That's a good way to describe it. So how do they stop it?
Luckily, we have effective tools to manage peach leaf curl. Copper-based fungicides applied before bud break are a really good way to control it. They create a protective shield for those vulnerable buds.
So timing is everything here.
It really is. Getting those fungicides applied before the buds start to open is crucial. And you have to make sure you get good coverage, too. Those buds need to be well protected.
So we've got pruning, sanitation, dormant sprays, and peach leaf curl prevention. It sounds like growers have a lot to keep them busy during those early spring months.
They do, but it's all worth it in the end when you get to enjoy those delicious peaches.
Absolutely. So what happens as we move into late spring and early summer when those tiny fruits start to form? What new challenges emerge?
Well, as those delicate little peaches develop, they become a prime target for a whole new set of adversaries.
Like what?
Well, brown rot, for instance, loves to attack those developing fruits. It can spread like wildfire through an orchard, turning those promising peaches into mushy disappointments.
Like all that potential just going to waste.
Yeah, it can be heartbreaking. But there are things growers can do to combat brown rot.
Like what?
Timing is crucial. Fungicide applications targeted at key stages of fruit development are really important. And you also want to be vigilant about removing any infected blossoms or fruitlets you see.
So it's a combination of prevention and intervention.
Exactly. You're trying to stop the spread of the disease before it gets out of hand.
And what about insects? Do we have any new villains entering the picture as we head into summer?
Oh, absolutely. This is when we start to see some of the major players emerge, like the peach twig borer, the oriental fruit moth, and the plum cuculio.
Each one with its own unique way of wreaking havoc, I imagine.
You got it.
Yeah.
They each have their own life cycle and their own preferred mode of attack. So growers need a multifaceted defense strategy to deal with them.
It's like a botanical arms race out there.
It really is. Growers are constantly adapting their tactics to stay one step ahead of these persistent pests.
So let's delve into the strategies they use to keep these pests at bay. Starting with the peach twig borer, what's the game plan for managing this tiny but troublesome creature?
Well, one of the key tools we use are pheromone traps. These traps use scents to lure the peach twig borers in. And by monitoring how many we catch in the traps, we can get a sense of how severe the infestation is.
It's like having a surveillance system for the orchard.
It is. And based on that information, we can decide on the best course of action.
So if the trap counts are high, what do you do?
Well, if the population warrants it, we might target those pesky larvae with insecticides before they have a chance to bore into the shoots or even worse, the developing fruit.
So it's a preemptive strike.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about the oriental fruit moth?
Those guys can be a real challenge. But luckily, we have a pretty ingenious tool to predict their emergence.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about this.
Yeah.
It's called degree day models, right?
You got it.
Right.
It's basically a way of predicting insect development based on temperature accumulation. By tracking the accumulated heat units, we can anticipate when those oriental fruit moths will emerge and time our interventions accordingly.
So it's like weather forecasting, but for insects.
That's a great way to put it. It gives growers a heads up so they can be proactive.
That's really cool.
Okay.
Okay, last but not least, we have the plum curculio.
Right, the plum curculio. These guys are sneaky. They leave behind these crescent-shaped scars on the young fruit. It's like their calling card.
If you see those scars, you know you've got a problem.
Exactly. You need to act quickly. Targeted insecticide applications are usually the best way to go.
It sounds like peach growing is quite the challenging endeavor.
It definitely has its challenges, but the rewards are worth it.
There's nothing quite like biting into a perfectly ripe peach.
I agree. And knowing that you've played a role in protecting it from all those adversaries makes it even sweeter.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but we're not done yet. As those peaches continue to ripen under the summer sun, even more challenges await. So stay tuned as we continue our exploration into the world of peach orchard pest and disease management. We'll be back after a quick break to discuss what happens during those crucial summer months and how growers navigate the final stretch towards harvest.
All right, so we left off talking about those early season pests and diseases. But as we move into the summer months, the challenges don't stop there.
Right, because those peaches are still out there growing and ripening on the branches, just becoming more and more tempting to those pests, I imagine.
Exactly. Those peaches are like a beacon for all sorts of critters.
So what are some of the things growers need to be on the lookout for during this crucial summer period?
Well, for starters, we need to stay vigilant against those persistent pests we talked about earlier. The peach twig borer, the oriental fruit moth, the plum curculio, they're all still lurking about.
They're like the villains who just keep coming back.
Exactly, and that's why ongoing monitoring is so important.
So you're still scouting the orchard, checking those pheromone traps.
Absolutely. We're looking for any signs of trouble damage to the leaves, entry holes in the fruit, even the presence of insect excrement. It's all about being a good detective.
Searching for those clues that a pest invasion might be underway?
Precisely. And on top of those familiar foes, we also have to worry about some late-season diseases that can emerge during the summer.
Oh, like what?
Well, bacterial spot, for one, can cause some real problems.
What does it look like?
On the leaves, you'll see these small, dark lesions, almost like little water-soaked spots. And on the fruit, these lesions can develop into scabs, which obviously impacts the appearance and marketability of the peaches.
So it's more of a cosmetic issue than anything else.
Well, it's not necessarily fatal to the tree, but it can definitely reduce fruit quality and yield. And in severe cases, it can weaken the tree, making it more susceptible to other stresses.
It's definitely something growers want to avoid,
Absolutely. And luckily, there are things we can do to manage bacterial spot.
such as,
Prevention is key. Copper-based bactericides applied preventatively can help protect the foliage and fruit. And just like with fungal diseases, proper pruning and good air circulation are really important for creating an environment that's less conducive to disease development.
it's all about keeping those trees healthy and strong.
Exactly. A healthy tree is much better equipped to fight off pests and diseases.
Now, you mentioned another late-season disease that can pop up during the summer, rhizopus rot.
Ah, yes, rhizopus rot. This one's a real troublemaker.
What makes it so bad?
Well, it loves those hot, humid conditions that we often get in the summer, and it can cause really rapid decay of the fruit, often starting at the stem end. The affected areas become soft and mushy, and they're covered in this white, fuzzy mold.
That doesn't sound good at all.
No, it's definitely not something you want to see in your orchard.
So how do growers deal with rhizopus rot?
Again, sanitation is really important. Removing any fallen fruit promptly and maintaining good orchard hygiene can go a long way in preventing the spread of this fungus.
So it's all about minimizing those sources of infection.
Right, and creating an environment that's less hospitable to disease development.
So we've got those pesky pests and now these late-season diseases to worry about.
Yep, summer is definitely a time for continued vigilance in the orchard.
But eventually, summer comes to an end, and it's time for the main event, harvest time.
That's right. All that hard work finally pays off.
But I imagine there's still some challenges to overcome even at this stage.
Oh, you bet. Just when you think you're in the clear, those pests and diseases can try to make one last grab for those precious peaches.
What kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, brown rot, for instance, can still be a problem during harvest, especially if we get some warm, wet weather.
So even at the finish line, growers have to be on guard.
Absolutely. And then there's another challenge that often arises during harvest bird damage.
Ah, yes, those feathered fiends.
They love those sweet, juicy peaches just as much as we do, and they can do a real number on a crop if you're not careful.
So what can growers do to protect their peaches from birds?
Netting is often the most effective solution. It creates a physical barrier between the birds and the fruit. But you can also use visual deterrents like reflective tape or scarecrows, or even acoustic devices that emit sounds to scare the birds away.
So it's all about being creative and staying one step ahead of those hungry birds.
Exactly. Harvest time is a busy and challenging period for peach growers, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
It must be so satisfying to see those baskets overflowing with beautiful, ripe peaches.
It is, and it's a reminder that all that hard work and attention to detail really pays off.
We've been talking a lot about the individual pests and diseases that affect peach trees, but is there a more holistic approach to managing these threats?
There is. It's called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM for short.
IPM. What is that exactly?
Well, it's a way of managing pests and diseases in a more balanced and eco-conscious way. It's about minimizing the reliance on chemical interventions and maximizing the use of natural controls.
That sounds like a much more sustainable approach.
It is. IPM is all about understanding the complex interactions between the peach trees, their pests, their diseases, and the environment. And it involves using a combination of strategies to manage those interactions in a way that minimizes negative impacts and promotes a healthy and productive orchard.
It's about working with nature rather than against it.
Exactly.
So what are some of the key principles behind IPM?
Well, it's often described as a three-legged stool, with each leg representing a crucial element.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Okay.
So what's the first leg of the IPM stool?
The first leg is cultural practices. This includes all things we've talked about so far. Pruning, fertilization, sanitation, creating a healthy growing environment for the trees.
So it's about giving those trees the best possible start in life.
Right. A strong, healthy tree is much better equipped to resist pests and diseases.
Makes sense. What about the second leg of the stool?
That would be biological control. It's all about harnessing the power of nature to combat pests. We can encourage the presence of beneficial insects in the orchard. These are the good guys that prey on the harmful pests. And we can also use microbial products, which are naturally occurring organisms that can help control certain diseases.
So it's like enlisting nature's own pest control squad.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, and the third leg of the stool.
That brings us to chemical control, but it's important to emphasize that this is used as a last resort only when absolutely necessary.
So it's not about spraying pesticides willy-nilly.
No, not at all. We want to minimize the use of chemicals whenever possible, and even when we do have to use them, we aim for the most targeted and least disruptive methods.
So you're trying to minimize the impact on beneficial organisms and the environment.
Right. It's all about finding that balance.
So IPM is this really holistic approach to managing pests and diseases.
It is. And it's becoming increasingly popular among peach growers.
I can see why. It just makes sense to work with nature rather than against it.
And that's where Pharmanaut's technology comes into play.
Yes. Let's talk about how they're using technology to help growers achieve those IPM goals.
All right, so imagine you're a peach grower and you're trying to keep track of everything that's going on in your orchard. You've got to scout for pests and diseases, monitor the weather, make sure your trees are getting enough water and nutrients. It's a lot to keep track of.
It sounds overwhelming.
It can be, and that's where Pharmanaut comes in.
So how does their technology help?
Well, they use satellites to capture high-resolution images of orchards. And then their algorithms analyze those images for subtle changes that the human eye might miss.
So it's like having an eye in the sky constantly watching over your orchard.
Exactly. And they can pick up on things like slight variations in leaf color, which could indicate a nutrient deficiency or even the early stages of a disease outbreak.
That's incredible. So they're basically giving growers an early warning system.
They are, and that early detection is crucial because it allows growers to intervene with more targeted and less disruptive methods.
So they can address problems before they become widespread.
Right. It's all about maximizing efficiency and minimizing environmental impact.
And all of that data is being collected and analyzed in real time.
It is. Pharmanaut's platform gives growers a comprehensive view of the health of their orchard.
That must save a ton of time compared to traditional scouting methods.
It does, and it also provides a level of detail that would be impossible to achieve with just the human eye.
So Pharmanaut is giving growers this incredible tool for understanding what's happening in their orchards.
They are, and they're constantly innovating and developing new features to make that information even more useful and actionable.
This is amazing stuff. It's like the future of agriculture is unfolding before our eyes.
It really is. And it's exciting to see how technology is being used to help growers produce high-quality food in a sustainable way.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of peach orchard pest and disease management.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from the life cycle of those tiny pests to the incredible power of satellite technology.
And the key takeaway here is that knowledge and technology are our best allies in this constant battle to protect those delicious peaches.
Absolutely. Whether you're a seasoned grower or simply someone who loves a good peach, understanding these challenges and solutions is key to ensuring a sustainable future for this beloved fruit.
So next time you bite into a juicy peach, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey it took from orchard to table.
A journey that involves the dedication of growers, the wonders of nature, and the ingenuity of technology.
Until next time, happy harvesting, everyone.
So we've talked about how IPM is all about finding that balance between protecting the crop and minimizing our impact on the environment.
Right, it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And that's where Pharmanaut's technology comes in.
Okay, so remind us again, how does Pharmanaut actually help growers achieve those IPM goals?
Well, think about the traditional way of monitoring for pests and diseases. It's a lot of walking through the orchard, looking for signs, checking traps, and it's time-consuming, and it's really only giving you a limited snapshot of what's happening.
Right, it's like trying to understand a whole ecosystem by looking at a few leaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where Pharmanaut comes in with this almost sci-fi solution, satellites.
Satellites? Like the things orbiting the Earth.
You got it. They use these satellites to capture high-resolution images of entire orchards.
So it's like having an eye in the sky constantly scanning for trouble.
That's a great way to put it. And then their algorithms analyze those images for subtle changes that the human eye might miss.
Changes like what?
Well, for example, they can pick up on slight variations in leaf color, which could indicate a nutrient deficiency, or even the early stages of a disease outbreak long before you'd be able to see it just by walking through the orchard.
That's incredible. So it's like a super early warning system for peach growers.
It is, and that early detection is crucial because it allows growers to intervene with more targeted and less disruptive methods.
So they can stop a problem in its tracks before it has a chance to spread.
Exactly, and that means using less pesticides, less water, less resources overall.
So it's good for the environment and good for the bottom line.
Exactly, it's a win-win.
And what I find really fascinating is that Pharmanaut doesn't just look at the current state of the orchard.
Right, they also integrate weather data into their analysis.
So they're able to predict what might happen in the future based on weather patterns.
Exactly. They can forecast pest and disease risks, giving growers a heads up on potential challenges that might be coming their way.
It's like they're giving growers a glimpse into the future of their orchard.
It's all about empowering growers with knowledge, enabling them to make data-driven decisions, and stay one step ahead of those pests and diseases.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive into the world of peach orchard pest and disease management.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from the life cycle of those tiny pests to the incredible power of satellite technology.
And the key takeaway here is that knowledge and technology are our best allies in this constant battle to protect those delicious peaches.
Absolutely. Whether you're a seasoned grower or simply someone who loves a good peach, understanding these challenges and solutions is key to ensuring a sustainable future for this beloved fruit.
And with that, we come to the end as another deep dive. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.